So what are the consequences here? As mentioned, the findings indicate that there was mental distress, attempted suicide, sexually transmitted infections, among others. But it is also important that, although we have been mentioning them separately, but it's important to know what type of children had multiple violence. And we can see that only 24% of the males had not experienced sexual violence at all. But we can see that physical violence alone was 32%, and the multiple, 7% had experienced the three types of violence. Similarly, for the girls, the percentage was much higher. It was 12% who had experienced the three types of violence. So we also ask questions about sexually taking behavior, and we found that one child who had sex before they had reported exchanging sex for what? For material support. I think this is really important for the study. HIV testing knowledge and the behavior. We know that the number of studies which have collected information on HIV testing and behavior, but we see that more than 9 in 10 Ugandans aged 18 to 24 knew where to get HIV tests. I think this is an important message, that more of the youth know where to go for testing. So also the VAC highlights the attitudes of Ugandan children and youth towards gender and interpersonal violence. We can see that half of the youth aged 18 to 24 years old believe it is acceptable for a man to beat his wife, with the most frequent reason being if the wife neglected what? Children. 6 in every 10 Ugandan youth believe a wife should tolerate violence in order to give the family together, and 1 in 5 females and 1 in 3 males aged 18 to 24 years indicated that they had become perpetrators of violence. So these are some of them. In summary, we can say that among the person aged 18 years to 24 years, 18 to 24 years old, 1 in every 3 girls and 1 in every 6 boys reported experiencing sexual violence during childhood. And among the 13 to 17-year-old, 1 in every 4 girls and 1 in every 10 boys reported sexual violence in the past. The most frequent perpetrators of sexual violence against girls were neighbors and strangers, as we have seen, and less than 10% of the children ever received services. Among the boys aged 18 to 24 years old, 6 in 10 girls and 7 in 10 boys reported experiencing physical violence during childhood, and in 4 in every 10 girls and 6 in every 10 boys aged 13 to 17 years experienced physical violence in the past year, and 1 in every 3 Ugandans aged 18 to 24 years suffered emotional violence during their childhoods. And this is some of the summaries, but the report has a number of issues. Thank you. As this is brief, what the key findings, and before I leave, my colleague will present about the recommendations, because statisticians don't know policies. Thank you, members, for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vincent. Can we clap for Vincent? I know you are annoyed, but that's the reason the presentation was made, to make you annoyed by understanding the magnitude of violence against our children. The next step for us is to move into action. One Chilean poet said, and I quote, "We are guilty of many things, many errors and many faults, but our worst crime is abandoning and neglecting our children." That's the worst crime. And the chairman, Human Rights Commission, is here with us. He has listened in. He has also taken note that children are being abused in the homes, but more seriously, even at school. And on that note, can I invite the Minister of State for Primary Education, a mother, a teacher of teachers, and also MP for Wakiso District, and a mother. Can I invite you, Honorable Rosemary Seninde? She has another function to attend to. Can you come and make your statement of commitment before we let you go? Honorable Minister, you're welcome.
The Honorable Ministers present, Your Excellency, Ambassador of the United States of America, Honorable Members of Parliament present, the country representative, UNICEF, representatives of education development partners, colleagues from line ministries, religious leaders and members of the civil society organizations present, our young people, the media, ladies and gentlemen. I have already been introduced, so I don't have to repeat introducing myself, but I must say I'm delighted to be here this morning to join you in listening and receiving the report on violence against our children. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to participate at this launch, and of course this report will inform our interventions on violence against children in schools. I therefore want to take this opportunity to thank the Minister of Gender, to thank everyone who has participated in coming up with this important report. While in this report, we note that Uganda has significantly increased the number of children in schools who are enjoying their rights. But also, it's also unfortunate to find that we rank highly in violating children's rights in terms of violence against children. It's true that many children are still exposed to sexual and gender-based violence, corporal punishments, and other forms of violence at the hands of their teachers, the hands of the parents, and many other people in the community. But the question has always been, my personal question has always been, is it because people are probably ignorant about what violence is or what it means to violate children's rights? I have taken an example, or I want to give an example, of one parent who tied the penis of her child, tied it tightly before the child went to bed. And when this parent was asked why she did that, she said, "I was only helping my child not to sleep in a wet bed, because this child has always wetted his bed. And now what could I do? I had to tie his penis in order to protect him from wetting the bed." Could that be ignorance? Isn't that violence against this child? Because when they took this child to hospital, they had to operate him. So my dear friends, I think we still have a long way to go. Ladies and gentlemen, it is true that a safe learning environment is one of the fundamental human rights of children and one of the fundamental responsibility of our ministry. And of course, I want to add that as a ministry, we are working in collaboration with other ministries and development partners to ensure that our schools are safe and conducive for learning. Our interventions have focused on a number of areas, among them mobilizing the communities on understanding how to deal with our children and how to take care of our children. Many parents are already complaining that children are getting spoiled because the government has come up with laws not to punish the children. Therefore, it shows there is a problem. Our people are probably not yet, they don't know how to discipline children. They think that caning a child, banning a child's fingers because he has stolen 1,000 shillings is the way of disciplining children. So we have to work together to ensure that we mobilize the community. We sensitize them on how to help or guide the children. It's not about caning them. A teacher is not supposed to punish a child because he has failed mathematics or English by caning until the child will get the marks the teacher wants. So it is all about sensitizing our people and making them realize the importance of protecting our children. We are also committed to establishing a positive legal and policy environment that is supportive to the protection of children's rights, including elimination of different types of violence against our children. We are also fostering positive and progressive attitudes and behavior towards the protection of children against violence in schools. The school is supposed to be a safe environment for our children. Therefore, for us as Ministry of Education, we are putting emphasis to ensure that our teachers do not violate children's rights. Yet they are the ones who are supposed to help the children appreciate that protection of their rights is key. Strengthening the capacity of key institutions to provide appropriate prevention and responsibility and interests of our children. Also promoting child participation and empowerment to prevent and report cases of violence in school and seek appropriate support for recovery and effective integration into the school system. Like I said, and I still emphasize, sensitizing our parents is important because we have had cases where teachers sexually harass children and then the parents negotiate with the teachers instead of helping us to be witnesses as we take on these teachers. So I think we have a long way to go. Conducting research and knowledge management for evidence-based policy advocacy on violence against children in schools in Uganda is another thing that we are really working on. Strengthen coordination, collaboration, and partnerships among actors in the prevention and response to violence against children in schools. However, we still have many districts that are not yet covered as a sector. We want to commit, and we still commit, that we shall roll out the implementation of our national strategic plan on elimination of violence against children in schools. We shall also roll out the sexuality education framework, including working with the Ministry of Health to promote access to information and services on sexual reproductive health among adolescents. Although we still have a challenge that many people misunderstand this. So as a ministry, we are working hard to ensure that we let Ugandans appreciate and understand what we mean by sexuality education. We need also to finalize and implement the guideline on re-entry of child mothers into schools and other education institutions. You will agree with me, dear friends, that many of our girls who have become young mothers, many of them it's not because they wanted to. Many of them it's because of these sexual harassments we are talking about, and they have ended up into young mothers. But the question is, after they have produced their babies, what's next for them? Must they be rejected by the country? So we need to have them back in school. We are working on this. We want to enforce the teacher's professional code of conduct And when I talk about that, you will agree with me. We want to work with other line ministries to strengthen case management. We are also working hard to incorporate violence against children in schools into the education management information system. Ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to thank all our development partners, especially Unicef, Irish Aid, USAID, and all NGOs for joining hands with the Ministry of Education and Sports to implement the National Strategic Plan in building safe, positive, and supportive learning environment. I want to thank the Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Madam Minister, and the PS and your team. We want to thank you so much for disseminating the findings and recommendations of the Violence Against Children survey. As the Ministry of Education, we commit to work with the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development and other line ministries to implement the survey recommendations. Because if we don't, then this meeting will have been put to waste. We want to commit that we shall play our part. Once again, allow me to thank all of you. You are not here by mistake, but you are here because we all want to look at ensuring that we help the children of Uganda, because our children, our future, and our future, our children. I say all this for God and my country. Thank you very much.
If I were you, I would have clapped better than that. Thank you, Honorable Rosemary Seninde. She has hinted on all the important things that perhaps have been lying in your head, thinking about what is that we can do as Minister of Education to curb this evil of torturing children at school, and finding that children are not safe at home, they are not safe at school, they are not safe in the community. So where should we hide our children? Thank you, Honorable Minister, for that powerful commitment. I will request Director to CEO of Director James Sabitu, Director Social Protection, will CEO of. Thank you very much. She has left behind the Director for Education. So for any questions that will come to education, he's here to answer. Thank you. Can I now invite Lydia Wasula in 2 minutes to walk us through the recommendations. The IGP, as represented by Emilian, the spokesperson of Uganda Police Force, thank you for being here, because there are also issues that we have to respond to. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have listened into the results. So what? What does it mean to us? I want to take you through some of the recommendations of the report. As Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development, what we think we can do if we are to end violence against children in Uganda. And it's all about the Inspire module, which some of us are already well versed with. We are saying let's implement and enforce the laws of the land that we have. We have the Children Act as amended with very strong sanctions against violence against children, and it obligates the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development to start programs that protect children against violence. We have the Penal Code, which was amended also to protect children against sexual abuse. We have the Local Government Act, which empowers the district local governments to protect children within their own districts. We have the Trafficking in Persons Act, which is very powerful on protecting children against exploitation, especially the children, the young female and adults. And apart from the implementation of and enforcement of laws, we are saying let's change those negative norms and values that we still believe in today that lead to violence against children. We have many of these in our cultures, and we dress them up to call them culture when they are actually bad practices for our children. Let's do something about them. The FGM Act is very clear, but FGM is still ongoing in the regions you know very well in this country. We have a strategy on ending child marriage and teenage pregnancy, which we have been implementing since 2015, but child marriage is still ongoing in many districts in Uganda. We have seen districts marrying off girls as young as 9 years because their culture, what they dress as culture, tells them that after the first menstrual cycle, the child is not supposed to experience the second menstrual cycle from the household of the parents. So all those vices are still going on, and we are covering them up in the norms and values. Let's do something about the negative norms and values and cultures that we still believe in. Let's strengthen the income of our families and households. The ministry, the government has put up programs. The Operation Wealth Creation is there. The SAGE for the elderly persons, because the benefits from this program, the SAGE, end up with children. Many of these older people, when you ask them what they do with their money, they'll tell you, I'm taking my grandchild to school. Please, let's embrace those programs. The Women Entrepreneurship Program is in place to support women. When you empower a woman, you're empowering the child in all spheres of life. The YLP program, please, let's embrace those programs and so many others. But we are also saying, Honorable Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development, that we need a cash grant for children, the vulnerable children, just like other countries have done. Zimbabwe has done it, South Africa has done it, Ghana has done it. They have cash grants for vulnerable children. We need one in this country, Madam Minister. Let's create safe environments for our children. The Honorable Minister of State for Primary Education has talked about this, but she has limited herself to the safe environments in schools. But we are saying even the communities are not safe. Children are not safe in the homes, children are not safe in schools, they are not safe in the communities. So where should we put our children? Let's create safe environments for them so that they live as children. When it comes to parent and caregiver support, many of us are absent parents in our households. We no longer care about our children. We wake up very early in the morning, go to work, come back past 10. We don't have time to interact with our children. We no longer share with them dinner. The ministry has put up the parenting guidelines because we have to remind ourselves. But we have to remind ourselves of our own roles and responsibilities towards our children. Do we have to? But still, these parenting guidelines are in place. The positive discipline as developed by Ministry of Education and Sports are in place. We have trained the parasocial workers who are our ambassadors as Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development in the communities to train the households, to train the parents, to remind them of their roles so that they take care of their children. We are saying education and life skills. Let's keep our children in school, because anyone below 18 in Uganda is supposed to be in school. The Ministry of Education and Sports, with Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development as co-chairs, has developed the reporting, tracking, referral and response guidelines as a way of guiding us on how we can report cases of violence against children. There is a full strategy on ending violence against children. All those are in place. We have done this in partnership with Ministry of Education and Sports. Please, let's embrace them. Let's do what we are supposed to do towards our children. That was in terms of preventing. If we do all those things, I'm sure we shall see zero violence against children in our country in the near future. But we are also saying, where violence has occurred, let's respond immediately through the referral pathway. Let's refer those children to services. Let's continue collecting data. This time around, this is the first survey against violence against children that we have conducted in Uganda. But many sectors were not included, like children on the streets, children in the institutions, children in the refugee camps. We need all information about that. So we are saying, let's continue conducting more and more surveys to know whether we are making a difference on the lives of these children or not. We have the baseline in place, which is this very data and the report that the Honorable Minister is going to launch today. As Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development, we commit to continue coordinating all sectors because we believe in the multi-sectoral approach. We know we cannot do it alone, much as we carry the mandate for childcare and protection. But we have to work with Minister of Education, Minister of Health, the development partners, Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Uganda Police, and so many others. We shall continue to coordinate you to avoid duplication of services and to make sure we don't concentrate services in one place while leaving others unattended to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Lydia Najemba Wasula, the head of Advocacy unit at the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. And when she was reading the recommendations, then I remembered somebody who is anonymous who said, when you are willing to make a sacrifice for a great cause, you'll never be alone. I can see so many people here who will be willing to walk with us this journey to terminate violence against children. And Robin Sharma says, there is no business in being busy if you are busy doing the wrong thing. Yes, there are so many people, they think that's also business. That's no business, abusing our children. Allow me now have the Special Representative of the UN Secretary General on Violence Against Children is with us in the virtual space. Can we have the statement from the Special Representative of the UN Secretary General on Violence Against Children? My men and women, can we have that statement?
Distinguished guests, dear friends, I'm delighted to join you through this message to celebrate the launch of the Uganda Violence Against Children survey. I'm deeply encouraged by the determination of the government of Uganda to address violence against children by conducting this comprehensive national survey. I'm equally impressed by the commitment of the government and its partners to ensure that the findings from the survey are used to inform actions to prevent and respond to all forms of violence against girls and boys. The richness and wealth of the data will no doubt help strengthen the national child protection system to ensure the care and protection of all children from violence by 2030 as required by the Sustainable Development Agenda. My sincere congratulations in particular to the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, to Unicef and Together for Girls partners, as well as to the AfriChild Center for Excellence, the Makerere University School of Public Health, and TPO Uganda. And of course, all those involved in making this a launch to remember. Dear friends, violence is a global issue that undermines children's rights and affects boys and girls in all countries. It knows no cultural, economic, gender, or geographic borders. Violence against children jeopardizes their chance to develop to their full potential, and this in turn erodes the very foundation of cohesive societies, threatening future sustainable and inclusive socio-economic growth. Most girls and boys who are exposed to violence live in loneliness and fear and are often left behind when it comes to receiving care and support to overcome their trauma. Many children simply do not know where to turn for help or are unable to do so due to their age, especially when the perpetrator is a family member or anyone else responsible for their protection and well-being. We now know from other violence against children surveys that more than 25% of girls and more than 10% of boys reported experiencing childhood sexual violence but few of these child victims sought services. And not all who sought help received it. In fact, in most of these countries, the proportion of victims who received any help, including health and child protective services, was less than 10%, leaving the vast majority of children unsupported. But global evidence also shows us that violence against children is not inevitable and it is preventable. It can be effectively addressed at the national level through strategic interventions that begin with a comprehensive assessment of the situation through sound research. The Uganda survey is therefore an excellent example of how data and evidence can help break the silence surrounding violence and break down barriers that prevent victims from speaking up and claiming their right to services and to justice. It is very encouraging to see that the findings are helping to place this concern at the center of public debate in Uganda, including through national TV and regional dialogues across the country. I know the leadership in all governmental departments is committed to taking action to address the survey findings and ensure that the necessary technical, financial and human resources, both from the government and from development partners, are made available for its full and effective implementation. The country's actions to address violence against children are a powerful illustration of how the government is delivering on its international commitments to tackle violence against children, in line with the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Untitled Chapter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. By conducting this survey and developing the response plan, the government has a rich set of baseline data which can be used to monitor progress. I hope the excellent experience of Uganda will be shared with other countries, and I therefore would like to encourage the government to consider highlighting these national developments in its reporting on progress on the SDGs. As you know, in 2019, the High-Level Political Forum in New York will, for the first time, specifically review Goal 16, including Target 16.2, to end all forms of violence against children. The government of Uganda can point with pride to the Violence Against Children survey and its follow-up response as powerful illustrations of its commitment to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. What better way to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of the Child in 2019 by putting children's protection from violence at the center of the national policy agenda and shared at a global level for all nations to hear. Dear friends, I know you will have a rich discussion today to identify the critical next steps that must be taken to ensure the data is transformed into meaningful action at all levels. I want to encourage you to pursue this task with determination and ambition. Please know that my office is here to support in the important steps ahead, to ensure that all children in Uganda grow up in a safe, peaceful, and natural environment. Many thanks for your attention.
You can clap. I'll pass on the claps to her. Thank you. Thank you so much. That is Madame Marta Santos Pais, the Special Representative of the UN Secretary General on Violence Against Children. She is here with us. She had wanted to travel, but she failed because of other competing demands. She ends by saying, let's move from data to action. Our chief guest and dear friends, I want to make a roll call. You did listen to the analysis of which regions are more violent than the others, and you should know where you belong. Can I start with people here who come from Eastern Uganda? Can you stand up for recognition? Can I have men and women coming from central Uganda stand up for recognition? So you know the level and magnitude of violence in that region. Can I have men and women and children from western Uganda stand up for recognition? Yeah, including my case. So you know the extent of violence in our region. What are you going to do? Now, my friends, Northern connection. People from Northern, men and women, including my big sister Akul, can you stand up for recognition? Now, we have also noted that violence is rampant in the homes. Can I have people who live in homes stand up for recognition? No. That means we all have a role to play, and we can play this role. The Minister of State for Health is represented here by Dr. Jessica Nsungwa, and she will be making a statement of commitment from that ministry. We are now going into a short panel discussion. Having listened to all this, what do people think? So we have picked authorities from different professions, different ministries, departments and agencies. They are going to come, and because I cannot moderate them, we had to look for somebody better than me. Mr. Maurice Mugisha, head of news at NTV Uganda. He's a renowned journalist, not only in Uganda, not only in East Africa, but the entire world. He's a father, he's a husband. I'll not mention the number of children. Men in Africa, we don't mention the number of children. Mr. Maurice Mugisha, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mondo. I'm deeply honored to have you introduce me. It's always the other way around. So thank you. I guess they wanted someone who also had gray hair, but mine is in different places. Your Excellency, Honorable Ministers, we want to recognize your presence, and without digging deeper into protocol, allow me to invite our panelists. I'll begin with a coordinator from OVC, NIU, and the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Lydia Najemba, to take her seat. Please, as I mentioned them, give them a round of applause as they join us. And next is Angela Nakafero, which is the Gender Technical Advisor at the Ministry of Education and Sports. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, as she joins us. Angela is, oh yes, there she is. Dr. Jessica Nsungwa, Commissioner of Child Health, Ministry of Health. Please do join us, and thank you very much. A round of applause. Hayat Akulu, Child Protection Specialist from Unicef. Hayat, round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Lisa Nelson, Country Director, CDC. And I know at this point you think they're all ladies. Right? You're all wondering, yeah? Well, that's not the truth. That's actually far from the truth. We needed to be gender sensitive. So we have two gentlemen coming next. So I'll invite Patrick Onyango, Country Director, TPO Uganda. Patrick. And we ensured that they are sparsely populated, so the ladies do not feel alone. And finally, Timothy Opobo, who's the Child Protection Specialist from Child Fund. So, ladies and gentlemen, I guess we will try and find a way of lightening this moment, but it is not actually a moment to be proud about. It is a very, when we look at the statistics, it's a very uncomforting position to be in as a country. And I guess this for us will open the eyes of most of us who are here, including our leaders and members of our community, on what's really happening. So now we begin from the ministry, because they are the custodians of this conversation. As the study reveals, and when I say the Ministry of Gender, not Ministry of Health, Ministry of Gender, I'm beginning with you, Lydia, because you'll set the tone for this conversation. Well, this study reveals very shocking, disturbing, and you can name it, unsettling information or startling information of very high levels of violence against children in our country. As your ministry is the custodian of our children or childcare in this country and protection, how are we prepared to end this violence? For us to be able to see numbers of 0 in 4, 0 in 0 children or young adults never experience violence. How do we begin that conversation of ending this violence among our children?
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Maurice. To us as Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, we are highly concerned. Actually, when we received these results, some of us took some time to believe them, not until we had to look through the interview questions again to prove that it was a scientific study. But as a ministry, our starting point, of course, was this survey itself, because we commissioned it. We commissioned this survey on violence against children, so it was our starting point to establish the magnitude of violence against children in terms of emotional, physical, sexual, and many other forms, so that we can understand the problem and know what we are dealing with. When we got these results, of course we got them before anyone else in this room as a ministry, we decided, we sat and agreed that we need to review the orphans and other vulnerable children policy that we had in place to ultimately develop a child policy. A child policy that is a national child policy that is quite comprehensive, covering all the 4 cardinal rights of a child. That is survival, looking at issues of nutrition and health, development, looking at the child in terms of education, right from ECD, primary, secondary, and tertiary education, protection, and participation. That's what the child policy is about. And this child policy was informed by this very data. The production, the development of the policy itself, and its accompanying national action plan was informed by this very data. So when you go through the child policy, the national child policy, draft as it is, it speaks a lot about issues of ending violence against children. It pronounces itself on what violence against children is and what we can do as a country to end violence against children. This child policy is right now in its final stages. We are about to complete it, and we are hopeful we shall have a Christmas gift for Uganda by giving you this child policy, by launching it as a ready policy, ready for use. In addition to the child policy, we already have the Uganda Child Helpline, the 116, Sauti. Sauti meaning voice, in this case the voices of the children, because some of them cannot speak for themselves. This is a fully established center that operates 24/7, fully staffed and managed by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. You simply get your handset and call 116 to report any cases of violence against children. This child helpline does not only respond to the cases of violence against children that have happened, but it also prevents. So when you see that violence is about to happen to a child, you call up this, and the action center, the call center, follows up the case through the probation officers at the district local governments, through the community development officers at the sub-counties, through police, health centers, so it promotes that referral network. Right now, as I speak today, on a daily basis, this Uganda Child Helpline receives over 700 calls per day. and all these cases are followed up. Some, of course, take some time to be completed, like cases of defilement, like, but simple cases like neglect, abuse are easily followed up through our community systems and district structures. Apart from that, we have action centers in 40 districts so far in the whole country. So these action centers support us with coordination of the cases that come through the Uganda Child Helpline here at national level. The ministry has also embarked on strengthening our case management system. By case management system, we are referring to structures, systems, the social welfare workforce, the tools we use for data collection, and so many other things. We are improving our system. We are improving our case management system. We are empowering, we are retraining the district probation officers. As I speak to you today, we have reviewed the curriculum of the in-service training. We do this with Makerere University. We are reviewing the curriculum, and come 1st November, we shall be using a new curriculum. Why? This new curriculum has also been informed by this very data, because there are a lot of emerging things that we have come to know as a result of this very survey. So we are improving that. Very soon we shall be out training the probation officers and CDOs again to be able to end cases of violence against children using this very curriculum. As I told you earlier on, we also have ambassadors on ground, our community ambassadors, who are the parasocial workers, just like Ministry of Health has the VHTs. For us as Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, we have the parasocial workers. After this data, we have also reviewed the parasocial workers training manual to include all the emerging trends. These parasocial workers are community-based. They move from household to household. In every sub-county, we have around 30 of them, every sub-county. And we have trained these in all the districts. Now we are improving their training manual to consider these new cases, to include modules of HIV/AIDS, the parenting and care support, the psychosocial support, even the case management itself, to empower them on how to manage their cases through the referral pathway. How do you work with police? How do you work with the health centers? How do we work with what? We are doing all that to facilitate the referral pathway. But I'll also not forget to mention that we have the Children Act as amended, which has provisions for protecting our children against violence, to protect our children against violence. It also has very strong sanctions, the Children Act as amended, and it obligates the ministry to start programs, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. And when I say Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, I'm not talking about ourselves alone, because like I said earlier, we believe in a multi-sector approach. So when it comes to a child, the needs are cross-cutting. The children require a comprehensive package. I'm talking about other ministries as well in terms of violence against children. Thank you very much.
I think she deserves a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. You have ably run through an entire 5-year strategy of the ministry in 5 minutes. But to the entire team, you do not have the same time she has, because she was setting the tone for our conversation. Please, let's allow for time, because we will need to get some questions. However, I needed to inform you who are here with us, and also those viewing the stream of this conversation live on TV and online. The statistics are being shared on the screens before us. Those are some of the key facts and messages that are actually available in the literature that has been shared with you. Feel free to refer to it. So as I go to Dr. Jessica, Doctor, I wanted to use one of the statistics that's being shared and also shared in the books that were given to us that has one particular one that I'm of physical violence. The number is almost the same across the three forms, whether it's sexual, physical, or emotional. They knew where to go. And here's your question as the ministry. What have you done in terms of care and treatment for these survivors of violence, these children who have survived this violence, but also how much are you doing in sharing that information, confidentially sharing that information with authorities so that action can be taken? Doctor.
Thank you very much. And the issue of survivors of violence, allow me briefly to step a bit backwards, but actually, whereas dealing with survivors is very important, I think the most important thing is to avoid it. Most of these children who have been presented this morning, who are victims of violence, actually become vulnerable much earlier. Most of these children get problems between the age of 3 years when their brain development is starting. And we need to have interventions to prevent that. You find that even in the same household, some children will be more vulnerable than others because of what has happened to them. So as a sector, we would like to start from upstream. And we are focusing on interventions right from pregnancy. We're doing about 1,000 days in the first age of the child, training mothers to stimulate the baby, to make sure that we produce babies and children who are actually well developed. Between the age of 0 to 3 years, that's when a child's brain develops, and it develops by as much as 80%. And if you don't tackle this child during that very delicate window, you're not doing much for this child. So we're training mothers to establishing ECD centers, early childhood development centers in our health facilities. We're training health workers to be able to teach mothers to breastfeed, to start stimulating these babies very early, so that when they grow up and they're exposed to these dangers, they can actually manipulate their way out. So it's very important to remember about that one. But let me get back to the issue of the victims. The main contact point with these children is our healthcare facilities. Unfortunately, most of these children, especially older age groups, don't fall sick. And we have a big gap of reaching out to these children. So one of the things we are trying to do in our ministry is, first of all, to introduce the curriculum in the pre-service training, which can actually deal with the psychosocial emotional issues of children. We still have a big gap in tooling health workers with competency, especially dealing with adolescent health issues. But we are working with different universities, and we have now established a curriculum which we are trying to roll out in the country. So these health workers can actually be apprehensive. They should have the right assessment tools to look out for these children, to screen them. They should also be able to use the right language with these COVID mothers. Most of the mothers should be able to report these cases, but we still have a big problem to get the mothers to report these cases, but also to think from the child's perspective how these children are affected, and also have some sensitivity about these issues. So we have a community health care program which we are rolling out using community extension workers. We are hoping that this program will help us to outreach the communities and start engaging these mothers at the household level, preparing them to understand the importance, not only focusing on survival, because most of our services are really talking about survival, and increasingly from the demographic health survey, many more children are surviving. But what type of people are surviving? You know, people are surviving and they are remaining vulnerable. Children are surviving and they cannot employ themselves. Children are surviving only to riot on the streets. So the biggest, I think, investment should be taken at the early stage to doing the early child development. We've also established programs for school health. I think everybody has talked about schools. We are partners in this policy. We set the standards, and we also try to make sure that there is an environment in the schools, in the school nurses and the sick bays, where some of these things can be addressed. We are also working on establishing medical kits. We have a special medical kits for victims of violence, not only children, but also women, where we also cater for these services to make sure that we are able to screen these children. And sometimes these children also have to have other medical checkups, like HIV testing. We must have a responsive system. We are also introducing adolescent health centers in these facilities. Unfortunately, the girl child is not coming across to the facilities, and that's why we're trying to establish outreach services for these people. Most of these services at the health facilities are integrated in the whole care system, but increasingly we have realized that when we work with the communities, when we work with the mothers, they have been able to inform us on the best channels of passing this information to these children. In many communities like Karamoja region, we have established some of these centers, and we're increasingly seeing mostly boys coming, but we are hoping that gradually also the young girls will come. We need to engage the parents, we need to engage all the key players, so that mothers can also gain confidence in these services. We are also thinking about raising the voices of young people. Many of these children are not involved when we make policy. I visited a country in Peru where I actually learned that actually when you engage these children, they can actually also shape the policy. So we are working with small groups now to see whether we can engage young children to make policy, especially on services to do with violence, HIV, issues of sexual reproductive health, so that we can actually get their perspective and gradually build a cadre, build a discipline of competent providers who can actually address this. We would like also to make sure that most people actually understand that when you go to a healthcare facility, these services are available. We have set new standards to make sure that caregivers, when they come, they can actually know where these services are available. And increasingly, in most of our health facilities, we're introducing people who can act as health educators or public relations people, so that when caregivers come and they are waiting for other services, that actually the facilities are well labeled, people know how to manipulate, go around in the health facility, and they can have centers. We are also introducing linkages, community linkages, facilitators who can actually follow up some people in their homes. For all this to happen, we need information, and today's data is a very important beginning point. But we need routine health information to capture some of these victims in the communities, and to make sure that increasingly our services are responsive. So through the village health workers, we're now rolling out a community-based health information system. We're going to be registering households and registering some of these problems. We're working with NIRA. I don't know if NIRA is in the room, to work out some of these systems to make sure that data can drive our planning and our programming and investment in children in the sector. Thank you.
Doctor, how much are you sharing? How much of this information are you sharing with the responsible departments? And I see police is here, especially if you have children that have been brought to into your care after this violence. How much is that information are you actually sharing with the parties responsible for justice to be done?
Fortunately, at the national level, we have some mechanisms for coordination, and we have very many programs, including this particular one, where we all coordinate through a multi-sector approach. The bigger challenge is at the district level. Most of our sectors have been moving at the district level in a vertical manner, but now we are beginning to work together. I'll give an example. We've worked with the Ministry of Gender and other sectors to develop the key family care practices. We have 23 key family care practices, and some of them have got to do with issues we are discussing today. And we are now moving in the districts together. We train the same team. We mobilize the team from all the sectors at the district, so that henceforth they can plan together and work together. I think this has been one of our biggest gaps. Even resources in the district there from other sectors have not been used. We're now recruiting welfare officers. We're working with the district health inspectors and educators, and we're also trying to see whether we can cascade this process up to the sub-county level. The challenge has been converging these efforts. I think the efforts have been very piecemeal, but we need to converge these efforts to have better impact.
Thanks, Doctor. Let me turn to Angela. Angela, from the Ministry of Education, the survey does pick that most of the violence, or at least the majority of those that do report or through the survey did communicate some form of violence, found that it happened at school. The schools where these children do come for an education. What is the ministry doing? Because even to date, we still hear stories of corporal punishment still being meted on our children, yet that was banned by government. What are you actually doing to enforce that ban, but also all the other issues you've decided on as a ministry to effect to avoid violence against our children, that of course is either teacher to child or child to child?
Thank you very much, Maurice. I think maybe I need to take a step backwards before I respond to your question. The work of reducing violence against children in schools by the sector started some time back in 2006 when the sector banned corporal punishment. I
see the doctor is also doing a very smart thing of giving you two microphones so that both can pick your sound. Thank you, doctor. That's okay, yes.
We started sometime back in 2006 by banning corporal punishment in schools. And of course, that has informed our interventions in terms of engaging teachers and learners, but also parents. Because at times you find that it's a carry-on from the homes to schools. There's instances where parents bring their children and insisting the teachers
have to subject these learners to corporal punishment. So we are engaging different levels. We are engaging the learners, we are engaging the parents, we are engaging the teachers in terms of enforcing the ban on corporal punishment. In 2012, the sector also conducted a study on safety and security of children in schools. And what we are seeing comparing with the statistics today is a positive development. When we started in 2012, there were higher cases of violence in schools, sexual violence, physical violence, emotional. And of course, in certain instances, we noted sexual violence, for example, was at a rate of 77.7% then. When I compare with the statistics today, which is being disseminated, we note a positive development from 77% to 35%. I think it's a point of reflection of how our interventions have contributed to reducing the forms of violence. When I also observe what is emerging out of the study, we are also seeing spaces of violence shifting from schools to homes and communities. For us as a sector, of course, it's an indication that somehow our interventions have contributed, are working, but of course that does not mean that we end the story. We need to work multi-sectorally to ensure that as we engage with the schools, we are able to engage with the homes and communities, and this is when the intersectoral approach becomes very, very important. So what are we doing as a sector? My Honorable Minister elaborated on some of the interventions, but I also want to elaborate on a few. We had to review the basic requirements and minimum standards for our schools and education institutions. And one of the basic requirements and standards is ensuring that our educations and institutions are really safe. They provide a safe and conducive learning environment. And periodically, we monitor our schools, we monitor our education systems to ensure that a safe learning environment is being upheld. Of course, there are challenges, but that is a program that we've worked on. We collectively, with other line ministries, we have an intersectoral committee on elimination of violence against children in schools, and this has been a very important mechanism of coordinating the different interventions. You're able to hear from Dr. Jessica, you're able to hear from Lydia and our development partners that we are working very well at the national level. We have challenges at the district level, but we are also moving in to strengthen the collaboration so that we are able to deal with cases of violence. We also worked on the reporting, tracking and referral guidelines on violence, and increasingly you can see that the level of reporting in Uganda has improved significantly. When we started, the level of reporting was 35.7%. Today I'm glad to hear from the report that reporting has significantly improved. So it's a point of reflection.
There's a disparity, I don't know if you've picked it, the disparity between reporting and actually seeking a service or help. Exactly. There's still that disparity which we must be able to resolve. Yes, yeah. Go ahead.
Maurice, I totally agree with you, but the starting point is the child or other stakeholders taking the courage to report. Because if we don't report, then even the response, we are not able to do something about it. So by reporting as the starting point, we are able to draw into engaging other stakeholders in terms of response. And Lydia is emphasizing case management. As a country, that is where we need to put a lot of focus, especially building on the findings of this study. We are working also with religious institutions. We've engaged all religious leaders in this country, because at times it's a shift of norms. There are certain things as Ugandans, we do as Ugandans, and we take them for granted, but in actual sense, we are violating children's rights. So we are engaging with the religious leaders to support us in shifting the norms, shifting the practices. For instance, female genital mutilation in Karamoja is looked at as a practice which is highly valued, but at the end of the day, it's a serious violation of the girls' rights.
Thanks, Angela. Thank you very much. I'll turn to Harriet. Harriet, what else? Yes, I can't see. Don't worry. What has worked elsewhere? And by elsewhere, I mean, in other countries that we can actually pick and borrow and actually use here in Uganda. You want to share some examples? Yes.
Thank you. Maurice, let me say from the start that just because an intervention has worked in Rwanda, Zimbabwe, or Senegal, is going to work in Uganda. But we have seen over the years that the world has been looking at this issue, that there are a set of or a cohort of interventions or strategies that when consistently and in a coordinated manner are implemented, the likelihood to reduce violence against children is very high. And I'd like to commend this particular report, particularly the recommendation section. It has highlighted some of those interventions. If a country consistently implements and resources implementation of its laws and its policy, alongside engaging its communities, making violence against children shameful to do, meaning you're shifting norms, either you're promoting a new norm or encouraging abandonment of that norm. If a country invests money in making environments that children live in, whether it is the home or in the community or in the school, are safe, if a country resources its people in terms of economic empowerment, and if children have the opportunity to gain some life skills, all of that, if implemented well, Maurice, has the potential of reducing violence against children, because you are addressing the very core problems that actually cause violence in homes, in communities, and also in society. Recently, we know that WHO has come up with 7 strategies that is called the INSPIRE. And these particular interventions I have just mentioned are actually what form the core of those 7 INSPIRE packages that we are promoting and encouraging countries to adopt. But for me, I think the most important thing really is not just that, but possibly the way that we will, the different components of the system and the way that we will implement this. If we invest in a systems approach towards implementing this, meaning we are actually building from a government system, then we will be moving towards a sustainable way of ending violence against children in a country. A typical case, let me just use the example you asked Jessica to talk about, Dr. Nsungwa Jessica, to talk about when a case comes to the health facility. Now, when a case comes to the health facility for treatment, a case of violence, be it rape or physical violence, there are 2 elements, or even 3 to it. It has the criminal aspect, but it also has the care aspect. Now, when you're talking about a child protection system, be it at the community or district level or at the national level, it means there has to be a mechanism that from that first step of intervention, the health facility, the health worker is aware and can actually link this particular case for a response from the police. When the police comes in, they're basically looking at the criminal element of it. So they want to ensure justice for the child, they will arrest and they'll do things like that. But there is the care aspect of it. The doctor will only treat the physical. That means there has to be probation and social welfare officers at some point, be it at the sub-county level or district level, who are picking up on this case to deal with the psychosocial aspect of it. I know that we do not have enough psychosocial experts around or to go around for the whole country. We know that there are specialized agencies, organizations like TPO in this country, they specialize in things like that. So it's about strengthening these networks of referrals, and if police, health, social welfare, and education are working together, this is what makes up the child protection system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harriet. It's interesting you brought TPO into this conversation, and I know that Patrick is picking our 5 key emerging issues from this conversation. But Patrick, I wanted to just bring you in briefly before I ask Lisa to say something. She touches on a couple of issues, and many may say some of the things we're talking about here are sometimes very academic, and we're talking strategy, policy, but here's a key fact, and it's captured in the findings here, where they're saying half of all 18 to 24, these young 18 to 24-year-old Ugandans believe it's acceptable for a man to beat his wife. And this is half. So this is a generation that has grown up experiencing violence, and we're now asking that this society that has experienced both sexual, physical, and emotional violence, that has witnessed this violence too, they may not have experienced it but have witnessed it, we are asking them to change their mindset. And so we're saying, what are the best practices, Patrick, you want to pick up that you may share? And I guess it's also an academic question, but I'm happy for you to find a way around it. You can share with us as we try and conclude this conversation before we open the questions. Yes, Patrick.
Thank you, Maurice. And I'll just begin by recognizing that violence will always beget violence. If children grow up in an environment where there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of deprivation, it will shape their behavior as adults. And so just like you're saying, it is important that we focus on the young children. Harriet has mentioned life skills. I think it is important to focus on imparting life skills, positive behavior on the children, but also at the same time dealing with their parents as well. So a lot of work in Uganda has gone into developing parenting programs. Implementing parenting programs is always challenging. You're going into households and telling parents how to take care of their homes.
Yes, but the parents are absent. I don't know if the report even will pick it. The parents are absent. They're not there. We've relegated our children to the drivers and house helps. That's who is raising our children. Or the other category of people that are raising our children are televisions and radios in our homes. Yeah. So that already in itself is a problem.
It is, absolutely. And you can't look at the family as we did many years ago. The family has changed. Many factors are impacting on the family and what goes on in the family. You need to look at strengthening systems in the home beyond the parents and guardians. When a child goes to school, they must be able to feel safe. When a child shows up at a health center, they must be spoken to in a manner that is conducive for them to continue reporting and accessing services. But I agree, where households and families are facing these challenges, we need to look at other options. And some of this work is looking into issues to do with parenting. Psychosocial care is very important. If you look at the statistics reporting on mental stress, but there are not so many people doing this kind of work. But I think there is, from what we have heard from the policymakers, I think there are starting points that we can begin looking into, and also using the statistics presented today to develop effective programs.
Thanks, Patrick. There is signs sometimes in our children, and we need to look out for these signs as parents. Your child changes, and then you say, no, she's growing, she's becoming an adult, so she's gone quiet. No, she's not gone quiet. There is a problem. Let me ask Dr. Lisa. Doctor, let's look for appropriate investment opportunities, partnerships that currently exist to end violence against our children. Yes.
Sure, thank you very much. And firstly, on behalf of all of the partners and the U.S. government, I'd like to congratulate the Ministry of Gender, Labor, and Social Development and all of the partners for the completion of this important survey. I think we've seen the risks are high. Unfortunately, we've also seen that that many children who have experienced sexual or physical violence are not accessing services appropriately. So I'm really welcoming this discussion and learning a lot this morning. I think as partners and as U.S. government, we're committed to working with Uganda government and other stakeholders to implement these recommendations, because I think that's what it's really all about. We recently had a visit of our CDC director, and one of the things he said to us is good science makes good public health. And I would go a step further and say good data makes good public policy. And so I think we're really grateful to see this report being published and disseminated today so that we know how to take action. I think on behalf of the many partners in the room, this is a partnership. We're not going to solve these issues without a multi-sectoral involvement of families, civil society organizations, and government. As a pediatrician, I'd also make a plea that we be sure that we involve children and adolescents in the response plans and not just parents and teachers and other stakeholders. I'm grateful for the presence of our ambassador here, and you'll hear from her later this morning. But I think as a U.S. government and representing many of our agencies, not only CDC, USAID, Peace Corps, others who work in this sphere, we're really committed to addressing this challenge here in Uganda. Perhaps just to cite some examples of the work that's been going on with PEPFAR funding, which is an HIV initiative, but we recognize that addressing violence and addressing structural causes of HIV infection are important to controlling the epidemic. So with PEPFAR funding, we have supported most of the violence against children surveys that have been conducted, particularly here on the African continent. And our colleagues who've done these surveys a few years ago really are using these data to inform programs, and we're very committed to doing that here in Uganda. In addition, with our HIV investments, we've had a long-standing effort to work on orphans and vulnerable children, and many of the components of the package that the various panelists have discussed are already part of our OVC programming, working with the Ministry of Gender, Labor, and Social Development, as well as with other partners. In addition, more recently, with our DREAMS program, Determined, Resilient, Empowered, AIDS-Free, Mentored, and Safe.
That's a mouthful.
Yes, it is. We are working with partners across Uganda to really address the vulnerability of adolescent girls and young women aged 10 to 24 in Uganda. We've seen some early success, and we want to really build on those lessons and continue to work with this vulnerable group. More recently, even still, the Inspire package that Harriet talked about, we got some additional funding from CDC, and I believe Uganda is the first country to be actually implementing this evidence-based package of Inspire in Mityana district with TPO, with World Vision, and with other partners. And I think it's an example of how, even before the publication of this report, we've been working together. I think finally going forward, again, it's critical as partners that we work with Ugandan institutions, with government, with others, that we use your action plans and your strategies to help you implement programs that are going to achieve impact. So I'd just finally like to say we look forward to working with all of you to actually improve the situation here in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. Let me turn to Timothy. Timothy, you will unfortunately speak on behalf of all the civil society organizations that are doing some work with our children, and so we're looking at some of the areas, your specialties you've been handling in this movement against violence against our children. Let's look at what you also think a government can do. What interventions you suggest as civil society that can be put in place to end violence against our children?
Okay. Thank you very much, Maurice. I would have to repeat a lot of what has been said. Because,
feel free to give us the new areas. Yes.
I think first of all to mention that civil society stands out as partners of government, and so we work to complement a lot of what has been said, and in many cases the civil society organizations, many represented in the room and many not even here, actually are the frontline soldiers right down at the grassroots. So I think I need to point out that civil society in itself brings to the table the fact that there's a closeness with the communities. They're down at the community level. The findings we've had today point to families, households, communities as settings where violence is more pronounced. And therefore, one of the areas that of emphasis would be strong collaboration between civil society and government, because a lot of what we're talking about, the strategies that are in place, are strategies that we as civil society, in our efforts to complement whatever government is doing, would be at the forefront of implementing. But I also want to note that I think one of the gaps, or one of the key areas that must be emphasized is the issue of resource allocation. The sector for children is a broad sector. I mean, it cuts across all the different sectors: health, education, justice, etc. But when you tone it down and look at the child protection element, in this case right now, you have the Department of Children sitting within the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. And one of the key things that we have been talking about or shouting about is the fact that we need more resources to the Department of Children. It's my hope, therefore, it's my hope, therefore, that the PS can use this report actually to make the case for additional funding to the Department of Children.
And all the stakeholders are here. We can clearly support him, since the media is here and all the other partners. Yes,
because the reality is that the foot soldiers, the people that are supposed to actually be at the forefront of addressing these issues, whether it is visiting households, whether it's dealing with counseling of children, are under-resourced. We talk about the probation and social welfare function. It is one of the most under-resourced. So we are not going to be able to see meaningful change without resource allocation or the requisite resources to be able to address this change. So all the recommendations that have been stated require resources, and therefore it's our plea that the resources that are necessary are therefore allocated to address this. So that is one key area. The other issue probably is, has been mentioned, the issue of enforcement of laws and it's an implementation of policies, but still, as I said, none of this can really be done without resources. So we as civil society are able to support in generating some of these resources, but also in building the capacity of the different structures. Right now we have local council chairpersons that have been elected across the country. This is thousands of leaders who are close to the communities. There is a need for them to be oriented on what role they can play to curb or address violence within their communities. And these are areas where we as civil society can come in and work with government to fill this gap.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you very much. Patrick will, I guess what we'll do, I'll let some questions come in so you can capture some of the issues that will also be raised, some of the new issues that will be raised. But I thought the best way to start, and I'm wondering where my microphones are. Do we have microphones? Yes, we have one microphone on this end. There should be another microphone on the other end. As we find one, I probably want to quickly say this. If you're asking a question or making a comment, keep it very short. We only have about 15 minutes. Keep it very short. Please introduce yourself. If it's a question, direct it to one of our panelists at the front, and I'll be happy to ensure that they answer your question. So hands for questions. We'll start here. Is there a second microphone on that end? I want it to be yes. So let's begin here. If there's a lady on that end, so whoever has a microphone, we'll go to that lady after this gentleman. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Edton Babu. I work for USAID Uganda Better Outcomes for Children and Youth, implemented by World Education Bantwana Initiative. My issue goes directly to Ministry of Gender in relation to the norms and values, especially for some of the practices that we know. Leave alone the Karamoja, but let's talk about, for instance, what is right now happening in the eastern region, the Imbaru, which is the male circumcision. It is a good practice, so we are told scientifically, male circumcision is right. But the attendant practices that violate the rights of children are not right. This is a cultural function, for instance, that will be graced by His Excellency the President. Politically, it is correct. The Ministry of Gender technically
should at least develop either protocol or guidelines, you know, to make sure that there is some hygiene. And by hygiene, I'm not talking about health aspect. There is some hygiene in the practices that are done after circumcision.
Thank you.
So the Ministry of Health, please help us produce guidelines or protocols to help some of these positive, so-called positive practices to make sure that they exercise some hygiene and then they do not violate the rights of children.
Thank you very much. Is that now both to gender and health? Because initially you had said it's to gender. Clearly it's a health question. But
no, the health department is doing its job.
Oh, okay.
For instance, they are screening all the surgeons. So that's why I'm talking about gender.
Thank you.
Because that aspect to me is lacking. Okay. The health is trying. Thank you.
Okay. We have the lady there with my microphone. Yes. I guess that mic is not yet there. So do we have a hand here? Yes, there's a lady there. Lady there. I'll come. I'll try and make it balance it. So from here I'm coming there. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Helen Grace Namulwana, and my issue is about having everything working together. Gender might do their part, education might do their part, but we need to move away from this business of cutting the child into pieces, because at the end of the day we are dealing with this one whole person. The issue that Timothy raises is very critical. The laws are not sufficient. I mean, they're sufficient in the fact that they are available, but if you don't have a structure, you have one probation officer per district to be able to address psychosocial issues and a few CDOs, community development officers, to be able to address hundreds of thousands of children who need psychosocial support, it becomes defeatist. It doesn't matter how well health is doing their part, it doesn't matter how well education is doing their part, if all other facets that contribute to the growth and development of a good child are not doing their part.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lydia, that's your question, because it goes to as the custodian of our children. Okay. I'll take this gentleman. If we can have this mic. We have a mic there, finally? Okay, yes. The lady there. Then you can hold the mic and keep it. Let's have the lady, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, panelists, and congratulations to the Ministry of Gender. My name is Penina Choyagala Tom Sange. I work with UNFPA. My question partly goes to gender and education. What I find is that many times people are becoming parents in this country when they are not prepared at all. We sort of wake up and discover that you're going to be a parent 9 months from today. And from what has been submitted today, I didn't hear much in terms of preparedness, for parenting preparedness. What I find is we are focusing on those who are already having children. How do they raise them well? But how do we invest in people preparing properly to become parents, to have children that are wanted, to prepare in time? Because it's one of the things that I find an issue in this country. We just wake up, we are surprised, and well, we have to be happy because culture says every child is from God, but are we ready as people to become parents? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, the gentleman here with the microphone.
Thank you, Morris. Congratulations, Ministry of Gender, and thank you for this opportunity. I suppose my question or
your
my
names,
comment,
please.
I was going to give you my comment. I'll tell you my name. The important things first.
The order doesn't matter. Feel free.
Thank you, Morris. I suppose my question and comment are related to what the former speaker just said. My name is Christopher Mwangzi Mugalu. I work for Child's Eye Foundation. This is a fantastic report, and this report talks a lot about some of the work that we're doing in partnership with Ministry of Gender at local government, strengthening communities, strengthening families, building and rebuilding, and working with government to build the structures. But there's a group of children that we have forgotten. We spoke about children in schools, we spoke about children in homes, but we forgot children in orphanages. And there is a lot of research that is published globally, but even in Uganda, for children that experience violence in orphanages. The report also highlights family connectedness. Children in orphanages are often separated from their families. Children in orphanages are often children unwanted, but not necessarily. They come from families experiencing a number of things, such as poverty. So I was just wondering, and I'm not sure who to direct this to, when do we represent or speak of children in orphanages?
Good question. What I will do, I'll allow the team decide who's going to answer that question. I guess it's not a health issue. Timothy is happy to answer that. And Patrick, you want to? Okay. So Lydia and Timothy, I'll probably throw it. Or Harriet, do you want to? Okay. So find a way of getting back to us. I only have time for 2 more, and since I have 2 here, I'll need 2 more. One more from here and 1 more from the other end. So I'll begin with the gentleman next to you there. There's okay. If you choose, yes.
Thank you very much, Maurice. My name is Charles Drecho. I work for UNESCO, but I'm also a professional social worker. I would like to throw this as a point of comment for taking note as we move from study to practice. I have noted, and I think we need to rethink our intervention strategy. Most of the things that we're talking about here are more about corrective measures. I think we need to refocus on prevention, because before this child experiences violence in their homes or wherever they are, there are a lot of factors that happen. So we'd rather do an isolate that have a lot of mileage if we address ourselves to factors that tend to contribute to this violence in wherever the children are. That's one. 2, there's an element of the people who interface with these children, the child care workers who are handling children on a day-to-day basis. Are these professional people? Do they get the training? Whom do they report to? And what is the regulation that guides them? I think we need to push and advocate for a legislation, a council that will be able to regulate the practices of those who are handling the children. Minus that, we will find that those who are supposed to be protecting the children are actually the ones who are abusing the children, and we have no leeway and no provision to address that. So I think this is an area that we need to look into seriously.
Thank you.
Lastly,
quickly, yes.
This is a form of violence that we all close our eyes to, and we should look at it. Sending children as young as 3 years to be in boarding schools in the name of being, to get education. I mean, we should all be, as a country, ashamed of sending our 3-4-year children in schools that are boarding, that because we want to give them education. We are killing our children.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Finally, you have a microphone? There's a gentleman with his hand there.
Indeed, finally.
In 30 seconds, yes.
Thank you. So mine goes to either Ministry of Health or Ministry of Education, no, Ministry of Gender, and it's particular on post-rape care services. Like we've noticed, there is a limited number of children and young girls that undergo violence that end up receiving the time-sensitive care that they need. And I really want to hear from Ministry of Health and
I think it's health. We'll go to Dr. Jessica. That's Doctor's question. Thank you very much. All right. So I'll begin with you, Lydia. You have a couple of questions. Feel free to run through them as quickly as you can. Then Timothy, Harriet has some input, Dr. Jessica, and of course Angela.
Thank you. Mr. Edton Babu asked what Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development can do about the practices and hygiene surrounding Embaro. But I'll say that is for Ministry of Health, really. But as Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, we are responsible for community mobilization. So let Ministry of Health develop the guidelines and we shall do our part. We shall mobilize the communities to do the needful depending on what they'll have produced.
The question had it was two-sided. So there was the hygiene, which is the health, and hygiene, which is the treatment. Yes. It's multifaceted, and I don't want to leave this man and he says that you didn't answer his question. So,
but even the treatment is still for Ministry of Health.
Okay, I know where I'll direct the question, don't worry. Yes, go ahead, Lydia.
Okay, then Miss Helen Namurwana, hers was just for purposes of emphasis that we need to continue working as a team. We have already emphasized this, that we are doing all what we do, including the survey itself and all the other initiatives, as mentioned by us, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education. We do it through a multi-sectoral approach because we know we can't do it all, much as we have the mandate. We can't do it all, but we have to work with others. So we shall continue doing the same through all the line ministries and even the CSOs and development partners. We shall continue to work together. Then Ms. Penina Choyagala was wondering what we are doing to prepare children to become parents. Penina, before you came in, I had talked about the parenting guidelines that were produced by Ministry of Gender. Right now, we are trying to disseminate widely, and we are talking about all this. We have the parenting guidelines in place, but we also have a strategy, for instance, on ending child marriage and teenage pregnancy. One of the key activities in this strategy, we are promoting safe environments for adolescents. We are bringing safe spaces for adolescents. And with this, we are working with Ministry of Health to provide those safe spaces where adolescents can have their time. And when they come like to watch the movies, the TVs, we talk to them about a lot of things. These are happening in the districts, including preparing them for parenthood, economic empowerment, and so many other things, care and support and psychosocial support, and so many other things. That's what I can say as of now.
All right. Timothy?
Yeah, I wanted to respond to the issue raised by Chris regarding children in institutions. I think Chris makes a valid point. That children in institutions are children that and not necessarily, we don't need to say have been ignored. This report that was shared today, first of all, answers a deficit that we had as a country. We did not have nationally representative data on violence against children. But I want to say that I think the issue of children in institutions is also, and as you rightly said, the Happy Child Center that is also represented here today has done a study with support from the Oak Foundation that's also represented here, that really looks into the situation of children in institutions. And I think that the alternative care framework that is in place by government, and also efforts that have been that are in place right now to try to reform child care in the country, are trying to address some of these gaps. But without doubt, the issue of children in institutions is an issue that we cannot ignore. In fact, the level of abuse that children undergo in these institutions is something that we must pay attention to. Although this data today has focused on, general children in households, the issue, and I hope that we will be able to come back and hear what the Happy Child Center was able to generate on children on the street and children in institutions, because it is really telling.
Thanks, Timothy. I wanted Helen from UBOS where's one of those mics, to share with us. Come here. It's easier to control you from here. So if you're speaking longer, I'll push you away. Just share with us, because in your findings you were doing a household survey, but they've asked a critical question on children in the refugee camps. Yes.
Thank you very much, moderator. I just wanted to answer the question on violence on children in institutions. There isn't much I can say, but with Unicef and the Ministry of Gender, we are planning to undertake a survey on children in all resident care facilities. There are not so many, I think there are about around 1,000. Those which are registered, that is from the ministry, those which are registered and the non-registered. So I think now what I'm picking is that when you are designing the tools, please capture information on violence among the children care facilities. That's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, yes, Lydia.
But Maurice, I also want to add that as a ministry, To us, children should be in those institutions as a last resort. We don't encourage it. We encourage that children should stay with families. It may not be the biological parents, but children should stay with their relatives. We highly discourage children in institutions. That's why of recent, you may have been watching on several TVs and print media, our Honorable Minister is busy moving around the country, closing these institutions that don't have the necessary qualifications. When you mentioned that there are 1,000, I could tell from Honorable Nachwala's face that she was not happy because she doesn't know 1,000. She has licensed only a few, I think around 133, something like that. And we are still talking about 1,000. All those others, that difference of 867 are operating illegally. And we don't know them, we don't encourage it, and we shall continue to move around to close them every now and then. Every time we get an opportunity, we shall still continue. The minister is moving around together with the technical team from the ministry, closing those child care institutions. We don't encourage them.
Okay, Lydia, I really must conclude this conversation, and you might take the whole morning. Okay, Dr. Jessica, yes.
Thank you very much. The issue about rape, we actually have guidelines and a policy on how to handle rape cases, including medication and treatment, linking this with HIV, with infection, with pregnancy, including emergency contraceptive. So we have guidelines, and health workers have been trained to deliver that services, and commodities are supplied through the system. We also have some shelters at some of the facilities. We know people who have experienced rape sometimes also have very many problems, and sometimes we also provide them stay at the facility in the region where we can continue doing either referral care or supportive care for this. We also know that most people who are raped are more likely to get raped. So we also connect with other sectors to refer these patients so that they can continue to be supported. And of course, like everybody has mentioned, the issues of the community are the most important. I wanted to comment about circumcision. We have also, again, clear-cut guidelines for circumcision. We're training people to do circumcision, and we are screening our health workers who are doing circumcision. When it gets to Imbalo, which we are going to see in this month, I think the issue here has to do with an interface between us who set standards, the people who are responsible for culture, and many other players. And I think we need to get this discussion. In some districts where we're doing circumcision, actually those people from Bali have actually come forth to some of these community mobilization and exercises where we are mobilizing for circumcision, and we've talked about it. We've also seen instances where some people from Bali are sending their children for medical circumcision in safe facilities, but they tend to have consequences. You know what happens when they come to these facilities. So I think it's a dialogue which needs to be built. It has some impact in different perspectives, but I think we need to begin this discussion. And I think the Ministry of Gender and the culture people should actually start. But we are ready, we have the equipment, we have the training, we can even do task shifting so that we can actually engage these people and they do some of these facilities as long as they're done within the standards and probably under some kind of supervision.
Education, yes, Angela.
Thank you very much. I think there were very few issues for the education sector. To Charles, the issue of babies in boarding schools, that is an issue that is totally condemned by the education sector. According to our guidelines, we are not supposed to have babies in boarding schools. It's a failure on part of the parents to protect and care for the children, and it's an issue that we have to address as a country collectively. So parents, we are really appealing to you that we don't need to take our babies to boarding schools, because most of our boarding schools are not adequately facilitated to address the special needs of those young boys and girls. Instead, the sector is promoting early child development centers where those babies can be ably catered for in terms of learning. So parents kindly take care of the children, not dumping them in boarding schools. I think the last one was the issue of, Penny has raised an issue of parents failing. The schools are trying to fill in the gap by promoting school-related families, where teachers are encouraged to support their docents and children in terms of learning and living like a family. So it's also an indication that somehow parents of Uganda failing, but of course it shouldn't be at the role of their schools, it should be the role of the parents. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We really have run out of time, but I must ask Patrick to run us through the 5 key emerging issues from this conversation, and immediately after Patrick will be done with this session. Yes, Patrick.
Thank you, Maurice, and all the contributions people have shared. I think generally it's going to require collective efforts, multiple actors coming together to move this forward. As somebody mentioned, I think the second thing is to move from data to practice. And how do we do that? Firstly, the policymakers are going to have to come together to provide the policy framework. From the discussion, we are finding that there is momentum already. The child policy has been developed using the data from the survey. We've had from Ministry of Education and Health as well. The workforce, there's going to be a need to strengthen the workforce to be able to recognize issues around violence against children and how to do their part as far as preventing violence. We also talked about resources, including what Timothy talked about, civil society coming together, but also looking at how can they fill the gap alongside other development partners. From the audience, there is a lot of practice coming up, and as practitioners, we need to begin picking out the key issues which haven't come out strongly or which are under-resourced, issues to do with working with children in institutional care, psychosocial support, the mental health and psychological supports to these children as well, and systems strengthening. And then lastly, community level, how do we meaningfully engage communities to unburden some of the harmful practices that are actually perpetrating violence against children? Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our panel. Feel free to take your seats. And as we conclude this panel discussion, the conversation continues online. You can use the hashtag #EndViolence that is being used for this conversation this morning, but also a very ongoing discussion around our children. A hashtag shared and used by Unicef here in Uganda is Invest in UG Children. You can also use that so that your conversation and your feedback can be shared or picked up in subsequent discussions. I also must say that this discussion, for those watching us, will be coming to your regions, because UNICEF has promised they will be coming to the regions to disseminate this survey, but also hear from the communities for their first-hand feedback on the survey, but also discuss solutions and ways how we can fight violence against our children and end violence against our children in our communities. So this discussion will be coming to you in the north, in the east, and in the west. Over to Mondo.
Thank you so much, Maurice and the panel. Can we give them another applause? Since morning, the adults have been speaking, and we are talking about children. Are the children invisible? No, they are here. Clever's origin. Can you come on stage and say you have listened and this is what you have to tell the people who have been talking? And somebody called Johann Wolfgang von said, to keep younger every day, read a poem. Hear a choice piece of music. If possible, do a good action. These children are going to give you a poem, but also give you a song. And like Jane Swam says, Joy is more joyful given a tune. The tune is coming, and coming now. It's a joyous moment, much as the situation is callous. It's good for you to know that we are not doing well, so that we can wake up and do better. The panel, you have done me proud. Thank you so much. With all these brains, nothing can defeat us. Nothing can defeat us. We shall conquer. There is also a poem we put in your wallets called Voice of a Child. Voice of a Child. Please read it and do something better. Clever's origin. These are on global standard.
They are doomed and tuned to suffer. Suffer day and night in hands of others, both their parents and then their teachers. Imagine so young those children are, but these others seem not to take heed. Those poor young do have heavy hearts. That peace is not enough. They want not to laugh. They live a life laugh. Innocent children. Prolonged violence swallows their peace. The price of them their desire grows. Their bodies are tortured, devoid no future. In the center of violence, children are seated. One from the east with one from the north. All to the children called to the center. Violence at home and violence at school. Innocent children.
Listen to the cries accompanied by yelling. Their eyes are watered at all times with tears. Bodily so fierce and rough like a bear. Surely it's a vice that children can dare. Children with peace indeed is very rare. Yet some adults don't even care. Pounding with sticks indeed they are not fair. Innocent children. They are tortured unmeasured and to the extreme. More with fear that children don't learn. They are covered in depression, wandering like clouds. Oppressed, distressed, depressed, and misplaced. Surely with no peace they can learn not.
They need good grades, yes. Is it by caning they get them? No. And just given they are ever beaten. Please, good teachers, stop it too much. Remember, they are innocent children. We give them motivation, inspiration for good acquisition, admiration, using education, building the nation. Innocent children. Their future in future is put at stake. Some are tied on ropes. Are you serious? Others are tortured to that bad level, building their produce as if they are thieves. Innocent children. You people at school, the story is worse. Their teachers, their teachers. Sometimes we ask, are these trained teachers or trained soldiers? Oh God, they beat, they rule, they torture, they back.
You have come late, so lie down for 5. And if you hesitate, you will get 10.
10? A child? Mwakuwabana abafuntu beti balimbuzi kidi mukubante ife masina nyinyi walimu na wazazi mufundishe watoto wenu muwape upendo wote lakini msiwapige wanahitaji mapenzi mengi wanahitaji mapenzi mengi wanahitaji mapenzi mengi.
Thank you. You can do the poem and then we continue with the rest of the program. Thank you. They deserve a standing ovation. They deserve a standing ovation. That is Clever's Origin Primary School. If well protected and well nurtured, all children can be like those children. And I want to sound a warning. If you are 50, don't try those strokes, because you can get into trouble. Yes, you try them at your own peril. I now would like to thank Mr. Mugwanya. Can you stand up and wave? The person behind Clever's Origin, right at the back, that's the man who is making geniuses. And Child Eye Foundation, thank you for supporting these children to be here. Can you stand up for recognition? Thank you. Thank you so much. Can I now invite Madame Noreen Prendivire, the UNICEF Deputy Country Representative, to come and make a statement.
Good morning. Good afternoon. That is a very difficult act to follow, but a very fresh reminder to us all about why we're here. Honourable Ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I think Mr. Brigadier Mama made a very detailed introduction this morning, so I don't need to go through the full list. Ladies and gentlemen and children, it's a pleasure for us to be here this morning to mark this really important milestone on a journey to effectively address violence against children in Uganda. Really, is there a more compelling issue of all the issues that UNICEF deals with on a daily basis? Accidents, disease transmission, education issues. Is there any more compelling than deliberate violence against children? I don't think so. To start with, we would like to express our deep appreciation to the Government of Uganda for its leadership in undertaking this survey, which is the first ever survey on violence against children in Uganda. The final report that we have seen today is the result of 3 years of tireless efforts for the VAC survey team, led by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development and Uganda Bureau of Statistics. It goes without saying that without your leadership we wouldn't be here today, and we express thanks for that. We would also like to specifically acknowledge the invaluable support through the process provided by our colleagues of the Centre of Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, of the US government. The high quality of the findings that we have here in this report are a direct result of your contribution, and we appreciate that. And to all of the other partners, all of those that have been mentioned today, those we have listened to, those we have interacted to, we thank you as well. The report provides critical missing piece in accelerating our efforts to put an end to violence against children in Uganda. But now we have a robust set of data on the prevalence, the nature, and the consequences of violence on boys and girls, which will inform our programming and advocacy to more effectively curb violence against children across the country. As we have been hearing, the situation of violence against children in Uganda is shocking. I think everyone here this morning has been shocked, and we should be shocked by what we have seen. Again, some of these results we have seen: 3 in 4 young adults experience some form of violence in childhood. 1 in 3 females and 1 in 6 males experience sexual abuse during childhood. The majority of young adults experience physical violence during their childhood. We have seen and we have heard that children who experience emotional violence are more likely to think of killing themselves than those who don't. And the survey shows, we have heard it, and it remains to shock every time we hear it, that half of young Ugandans think it is acceptable for a man to beat his wife. Not just that it is happening, but that we feel it's acceptable. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation is not acceptable. Protection of children from violence is a legal, moral, and ethical imperative for all of us. Simply put, violence against children needs to stop. Violence is not inevitable, it is not cultural, it is not acceptable. It can be prevented and effectively addressed. Doing so is not only critical for the well-being of children, but for the progress of this wonderful country as a whole. The challenging task ahead of us now is transforming this evidence into concrete actions, and so many we have heard this morning. They are doable, they're viable, they're practical actions that we can take forward. The government has already taken very solid steps in policy, initiatives in schools, the National Child Helpline, working groups to address online sexual abuse, social mobilization initiatives. So much is in place, but so much needs to be done. Globally, we know that violence against children is a major issue. Trafficking, exploitative work practices, sometimes in slavery-like conditions. So we're very pleased that Uganda is among one of 11 countries globally that's part of the global partnership to end violence against children. So Uganda has already signed up to publicly invest in addressing violence, and we commend that. The evidence now provides the government and all its partners with an opportunity to do more, to accelerate action and to end violence against children. Among the many priorities, we hope that, and we encourage, that we will finalise, launch and implement the comprehensive child policy. We encourage the government, and we are willing and ready to work with the government to strengthen district child protection systems, to prevent and respond to cases of child violence in the districts. And we also need to invest more in maintaining and expanding the Child Helpline, which, as we have heard this morning, is already providing an invaluable service. Hundreds, thousands of children and parents and carers already using the Child Helpline. But we need to maintain it and expand. In line with Agenda 2030, and in order to achieve our SDG 16 target, we must ramp up our efforts in addressing violence. And we also need to remember the children in the very hardest to reach areas. Violence against children is all of our business. Attitudes to violence need to change until all forms of violence are recognized and stop. There is no such thing as a little violence or an acceptable level of violence. I was waiting this morning for when Mr. Mondo was inviting people to stand up from different parts of the country. And I thought, how would it be even in this room if he was to ask all of those who have experienced violence or perpetrated violence or witnessed violence to stand up? And I think a lot of us would have been standing up. We all need to play a role. Unicef remains together with partners to support that. We're committed for this current country programme to continue to make this one of our highest priorities. And let's do our best. Let's make this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Noreen, Deputy UNICEF Country Representative. Since they are going to continue with us, can you clap again? They will continue working with us. We have just done the small part. Can I now invite the Minister of State for Primary Health Care, represented by Commissioner Dr. Jessica Nsongwa, to come and make a statement of commitment. She was a panelist, but now she's speaking as a minister. Please, you're welcome, Doctor.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I'd like to begin by bringing apologies from my Honorable Minister, Sarah Opendi, who unfortunately had to go to Hoima again to officiate on another important child development activity, the Breastfeeding Week. So allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to read her speech. Honorable Ministers here, Your Excellency, the Ambassador, the Members of Parliament, the Permanent Secretaries here, the representatives from the development partners, religious leaders, civil society organizations, all dignitaries here, ladies and gentlemen. On this occasion of the launch of the Violence Against Children's report for the country, it provides an opportunity for us all to understand the issues that are affecting our children and provides us with good guidance to our various ministries on the necessary interventions that have to be prioritized. The reason for the commitment for violence against children is clear for this country. While the children represent half of the Ugandan population, they actually constitute all of its future. And not only is good health a right for children, but as a matter of principle, it's also a prerequisite for development and stability. Therefore, it should hardly need affirming that few investments will pay larger dividends. Healthy children will make possible the well-being and productivity of future generations for decades to come. And unhealthy children will, at best, ensure the perpetuation of poverty in this country. We need to break the generational cycle of poverty, and children are the key to this. Ladies and gentlemen, given the report we have received today, violence is indeed an epidemic, and young children are often victims in this epidemic. Despite the many pledges of action, addressing the vulnerabilities and rights of victims of violence has not been well prioritized in the ways we expect. Too many face a myriad of disadvantage, their life chances are limited, they are now vulnerable to malnutrition and many preventable diseases, and they are often overlooked when key national intervention and policies are formulated. This does not only create missed opportunities for accessing responsive health care, but also denies them chances to be screened for exposure to violence. Ladies and gentlemen, despite this situation in the health sector, we believe that there is a reason for optimism, and a real opportunity exists to reverse Uganda's negative brand image by making investment in the health of Ugandan's children a relentless priority. A renewed commitment to meeting Uganda's most intractable challenges is reflected in the recent demographic health survey findings, which have shown marked improvement in the survival of children under 5 years. The age group above 5 years to 10 years, however, has received less focus. The sector has a new determination to promote health by ensuring better service delivery and accountability for results. First, the Ministry of Health is mandated to ensure a healthy and productive population that contributes to economic growth and national development. It has a mission of facilitating the attainment of good standard of health by all people of Uganda in order to promote a healthy and productive life. And the Ministry of Health, through the Health Sector Development Plan, has in fact made children a priority. Further, a sharpened plan for maternal child health has been developed, and early child development and care and nutrition, timely sexual and reproductive health education in schools and communities are among the key interventions in this plan. Henceforth, the government has mobilized internal and external funds to scale up the sharpened plan, including a component of incentivizing health workers to deliver through performance-based financing and procurement of a sexual gender-based violence medical kit to service providers. A recent review of 23 significant regional preventive and curative interventions revealed very low coverage. Only 5 interventions have coverage above 66%, and in 8 it is below 35%, which targets violence against children. Fortunately, most of the needed interventions can be delivered at home or through outreaches and community-based health strategies. The sector has started selecting and training community health extension workers to improve the health and they reduce the child mortality dramatically in this country. Complete coverage of community extension workers could avert an estimated 13% of child death in Uganda, and implementing these interventions constitutes the way ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ministry of Health therefore would like to recommend to the following. 1. To increase access and availability of quality child and adolescent health services at all health facilities that provide prompt, affordable, and appropriate prevention and response services to survivors of violence without discrimination. We also commit to train healthcare workers on provision of child and adolescent-friendly health services within our national framework, including appropriate assessment tools and management tools for violence against children. We further promote awareness among child adolescents, families and communities about existing forms of violence, responsive services, and then the capacity to recognize symptomatology and report these to the health workers. We also commit to provide remedial services to child survivors of abuse and neglect along their life cycle, and have embarked on a program to establish waiting shelters for these patients. We plan to support clinical management and rehabilitation of the cases of violence, including gender-based violence, and also ensuring availability of the essential medical kit for sexual gender-based violence. We would like to strengthen capacity of multiple stakeholders involved in the prevention, response, and management of violence, and ensure mutual accountability for results. We would like to promote male involvement in combating violence among children, especially in sexual gender-based violence, but also putting more emphasis on witnessed violence. We would like to strengthen partnership with other influential people, the members of parliament, the Interreligious Council of Uganda, traditional healers and youths, to promote and popularize the 23 key family care practices needed along the life cycle. And finally, we'd like to support advocacy for implementation of legal instruments that protect the rights of children, adolescents, women, and men in this country. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to express our sincere gratitude to our development partners for the support rendered to ensure that we have a healthy population and see our children survive, develop, participate, and are protected into adulthood within a safe environment. This partnership, including multilateral organizations, bilateral partners, international foundations, and NGOs working with the national governments, aims to galvanize the world's attention once again to focus on child survival activities. Partners intend to work for greater effectiveness in the utilization of existing resources through closely coordinated actions at country level. This cannot be achieved by Ministry of Health alone. It requires a multi-sectoral approach. And in the same vein, I would like to thank Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development for bringing all the line ministries to share this very important survey report. And we pledge to implement the recommendations from this report as per our given mandates. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jessica. Before I invite Her Excellency to come and make a statement, permit me to recognize Mr. Joachim Park, Mission Director, USAID. Thank you for being with us. Permit me also to recognize one of our members of Parliament who are here. Could you kindly stand up for recognition? Honorable Ntende Robert, representing the Chairperson, Parliamentary Forum on Children. Thank you for being with us. Honorable Muhammad Ali Aruma, Secretary for Social Service, Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, representing the Mufti. Could you wave to the people? Thank you for coming. I also recognize Oak Foundation. They have been very supportive to us. Oak Foundation, Basil, I think he has left. I also thank Uganda AIDS Commission. You have worked with us always. INID, can you wave to the people? Thank you so much. And I recognize all of you who have worked with us. Let me remind you that this function is live on NBS, NTV, and UBC. Can I now take this rare honor and pleasure to invite Her Excellency Deborah Marak, the USA Ambassador to Uganda, to make a statement. Madam Ambassador.
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Minister of Gender, Labor, and Social Development, if you will permit me, in the interest of time, all protocols duly observed. And I will, if you will also permit me, I intend to sort of summarize my statement, again, in the interest of time, but more importantly, because I think a lot of what needs to be said has already been said. And there's much more data and information to be mined from the report that we've received this morning and will be launching officially in just a few minutes. But let me say that on behalf of the U.S. government, through our 3 different entities, PEPFAR, USAID, and CDC, our Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, we were very proud to provide financial and technical assistance to ensure that this survey took place and that the data has been analyzed. But we want to say thank you as well to all of the many other partners who have been part and parcel of this effort. This was really generated because we, like the Ministry of Gender and Labor and Social Development, were alarmed by the increasing number of reports that we were receiving or hearing about of violence against children in many different forms. And we were hearing this as well from our partners in the field, from Ugandans, from partners like the police even, as we moved around the country. So it was decided that at a minimum we needed to have some really good data to start from, to understand where we were collectively being successful and where we were failing. So this was one of several surveys that we've done in other countries, but I think for us here, as I looked through the report this morning, there are some very alarming statistics, as many of the speakers have already said. And this is not unusual. I have seen it in other countries where I have served, but I am quite disturbed by the high level of violence that's reported by children across the country in Uganda. Children need safe places to be, and they're not finding them. And we, collectively, as a society and as adults, as those who should be taking care of them, are failing them. And this data shows that we have a lot more work to do together. Unfortunately, you will see in this report as you go through it just how much physical and sexual violence Ugandan children face before they reach the age of 18. And we all know that even after that age, that violence against women in particular, but not just women, continues to be high. So as we've heard, 1 in 3 females and 1 in 6 males under the age of 18 will experience sexual violence. But even more sadly than that is only half reported that abuse to someone, and fewer than 10% sought help. Now, part of the reason for that, as we know, and this is an issue that I have spoken to on several occasions, is the issue of stigma. And so families and communities, our police officers, our folks in the justice system, we have an obligation to work hard to remove that stigma, because the victim should not be victimized again just because we don't believe them, we want to have something go away. We need to work hard on strengthening those systems so that people will feel free to report. And parents have a very important role to play in this. You are often part of the problem and not part of the solution, and we have to change that equation. The survey also tells us that perpetrators of sexual violence are often people that are known to the victims. So members of family, members of their community, people that they know in their churches and in their schools. It also tells us that we all have to raise our voices. We should not have to listen only to the voices of children. Children should not be put in that position where they need to stand up, as we saw in this wonderful event, and remind us of our responsibility as parents, as adults, as caregivers, as school teachers, as politicians. We have a job to do. The abuse of children, if not confronted and combated vigorously, will continue to harm us and keep our children from thriving. I strongly encourage the Ministry of Gender, Labor, and Social Development, all the other partners, all the other relevant ministries and government institutions in Uganda to continue to work together to take this data to help inform our policy decisions and to help inform our actions. My government is committed to supporting the elimination of violence against children in Uganda and elsewhere through our programs to ensure that all voices, especially those of the most vulnerable of our children, are not only heard but fully represented in our development efforts and our human rights platforms. In closing, let me just say thank you again for taking your time to be with us today, to commend the Ministry of Gender, Labor, and Social Development, all of the folks at the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, AfriChild Center of Excellence, Child Fund Uganda, Makerere University School of Public Health, Unicef, and of course our various U.S. government agencies for carrying out this work and presenting us with a lot of information to digest. We need to use this information. I don't want this to be yet another launch. I attend a lot of launches in my capacity as ambassador, not just in Uganda but elsewhere, on violence, ending violence against women, on ending violence against children, and that's great to draw attention to the seriousness of the problem. But launches don't solve problems. We need to do work together to implement and take action. Our children's lives are at stake. What are we going to do about it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellence. We need to move to action. We thank you and thank you and thank you so much. Lydia, you are standing in the way of the ambassador. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Excellency. And we thank you for your continued support. But like Charles Dickens would say in Oliver Twist, we need more. We are not yet there. We are just beginning. We are just beginning. We thank you so much. Can I now take the honor and privilege to invite the Minister of State for Youth and Children Affairs, Honorable Florence Nachiwala Chiyingi, Mrs., to come and make a statement and thereafter invite the chief guest to do the needful. Thank you, Honorable Minister.
The Honorable Minister for Gender, Labor and Social Development, Hajat Mokwaya, Your Excellency the Ambassador, I'm meant to understand that we have members of Parliament here, pay tribute to you all, our development partners, religious leaders, cultural leaders that are here, ministry departments and agencies, and in particular the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Gender, Children and Friends of Children. I would like Madam Minister to permit me to recognize individually the people from the Ministry of Gender who are actually making much of what is being talked about happen. Mr. Bijirimana, James Webitu, can you kindly stand up? I want these people to really see you. And also allow Mr. Kabogoza, the ex-commissioner, can you kindly stand up with the team? These are great people. You really give them a second applause. I have tested the service, and I now know that the children's docket can really move out. We just had a scuffle recently where we realized that we need to expedite and quickly come out to ensure that no child is left behind, especially in the streets. When the Honorable Mukwaya militarily ordered an HR that go out and hit the ground and get things done, so these people can really get things done. I thank the organizers. They have gone through the partners here, and I believe that they have done a great job. You have had it being mentioned. And allow me, before I invite the Honorable Minister, to have this to say, that much as it's all said and done, it's not all lost. We need to draw our attention briefly to the history of the country, Uganda. And we need to know that it takes a village to raise a child. So why is it now that it takes a ministry and it takes countries to raise the same child? Primarily, when you look at the history of the country, Uganda, the actions have reduced, but the reporting has increased. So we have this kind of democracy in the country where you can reach out and board right from the village level in terms of leadership. So they can now speak out and they can be heard. So we have the statistics, but it does not necessarily mean that brutality has increased. The actions have reduced. We are also grappling with the figures of close to 24 million of children, and we believe that in the next 10 to 20 years it will double. So how prepared are we in the absence of communities that are empowered and villages that used to raise a child? How empowered are we to make sure that we trace child by child? So we need to make sure that communities are empowered to take care of their own children. Here I'll pay tribute to the presence of the cultural leaders. I've seen the Honorable Mariam, who is from the Buganda Kingdom, the Minister for Women Affairs. These cultural institutions, the fact that they are also in the Ministry of Gender, have been, working, burning midnight candles to ensure that they sustain the community involvement. Before marriage, the girl will be prepared, intensively prepared to get ready for the turbulence in the family, and to understand that any outcome of childbearing would eventually be known by the entire village. You would become an outcast of sorts, if you abandon your role. And they would tell you that don't marry so-and-so, because either those people fall mad and they commit suicide, and they had the history, home to home, village to village. So in the absence of all that, how prepared are we to replace what was being done? Ladies and gentlemen and honorable members, we also need to reflect on the role of education in boarding schools. So we are looking at 3 terms. The children are now and then in school. They are almost visitors at home. There are holidays that are 2 weeks. So chances are that, like a minister, probably the child will find you out of the country and you're panicking to take a leave in order to have the same time with your child, because you have the biological role to pass on your traits to that person. Because these children not only need money or education, but they need us, the mothers. I'm a mother of 5, and I know this. So if we can copy the foreign culture, they have this summer thing that is almost a couple of months, not really few, but they can stretch to almost 4 months. They travel, they swim with the children, they do it all and they save for it. So we need to borrow some of these attributes that probably bring us closer and give us a chance to attend to our own problems at home. So ladies and gentlemen, as I wind up, we need to pay tribute to the government of the Republic of Uganda. It has worked tooth and nail to ensure that the children are prioritized. The children are given the infrastructure that it takes. Even the few nitty-gritties that are there are being attended to. So we believe that with a call to giving us more money as the docket of children, we certainly have the potential to leave no stone unturned. Finally, the parents have not brought to book to know that the numbers play a critical role. I come from a family of 12 and I'm the 8th born. But gone are the days when you have equal chance regardless of what parents have to put in terms of income, because we would end up growing and learning and having it all with minimum effort. But now it has greatly changed. You need to have the connotation between the number of children you're giving birth to and your ability to raise them up almost equally. You have to reflect on the words of discipline vis-a-vis abuse. Where is the cutting line? Training versus child labor. Where is the difference? Care versus love. How much grab do you take to school? Is that love? It's really crossing the bridge. Consultation versus participation. Sharing versus, you need to reflect on all that as key players in the industry. I thank those who have been with us when we are fighting the scourge of street children. This is a clear testimony that yes, something can come to an end. Today, there are not children on the streets, and we are fighting hard to sustain the status quo. I thank the Minister, Honorable Mukwaya, and the team, KCCA, the Uganda Police. Yes, it is true. KCCA, the Uganda Police, the Ministry of Karamoja Affairs, who have been with us as we start the struggle. It's now 62 days down the road, but we believe that the situation will get even better if some of the people do not play foul play in bringing these people economically back to the street. Madam Mukwaya, I would like to invite you, and I would like to, I think that's the next on the agenda. There's no more entertainment, I believe. There's no more entertainment. Thank you. I would like to take this singular honor to invite the Minister, and who is the chief guest this afternoon, to address us. I thank you.
Can we stand up and stretch ourselves? It has been long, and we have declared physical what? Yes, fitness. And for you who are as my age, you should mind about clothes. You can now sit. So that is the protocol that I've started with. Good afternoon, everybody. I know time is not on our side. All of us have our programs in the afternoon. So I'll just go to the issues that I've picked as a policymaker. But allow me to introduce a singular friend, Daniela, from Together for Girls. Please stand up. She promised me when we were in Sweden, in the Global Summit for Children, that she will really come. She has come to listen to this report, and she's flying out tonight. Yes. I invited her specifically because I wanted her to hear this side of the story. But I also want to request the PS that because of the issues that I'm going to raise, this report should be read alongside another survey that was done by not other than our own, the Department of the Department of Social Work and Social Development of Makerere University. The book is very informative. I have read it. I've read the report. I've read the other book, page to page, and there is a difference in both the recommendations, but also the facts. Violence Against Children. It was edited by Professor Walakira. But the people who actually did the research was Mujuni and Walakira. Having said that, who presented to us these photos? Mond, who took these photos? Please, quickly, don't waste time. There is an issue there. I'm an artist. Who took that photo? Because there is a message which I want to show to the meeting.
Instead, you are chosen by a team. It's not an
Okay, whoever chose this photo, against, can you play the slide? There's a summary of various key facts and messages. Put this picture there also on the screen, this one, and you see the difference. The other photo, which is circulating without the permission of the children, that photographer should have told the child to clean the nose. What was the hurry? So you have permanently destroyed that young boy. The boy shows that he is well fed. But because of what message the person who took the picture wanted to give, cleaning a nose is, every child, all of us had that thing. But he should have noted that I'm going to publicize this young child for permanently for life. So one should have allowed that child to clean the nose. That is the message. As a mother, I object, because you did not seek the permission of these children to take their pictures. And somebody can sue for the rights of the children. We are talking about rights for children, and you are really violating the rights of children. Now, I want also to, and it has circulated. This friend of mine has, this is already on the website, you know. I'm glad that the researchers, in their presentation, they raised only 2 limitations to their data. I want to submit another one. One limitation, and you heard from the person who presented, he was interchanging violence against children and harassment. I want to put it on record. This is from the dictionary. That harassment, this is an aggressive pressure or intimidation, persecution, pestering, bother, irritate, or coerce, or coercion. That is harassment. But violence, on the other hand, this is behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, kill someone. It also means brutality, roughness, ferocity, cruelty, ruthlessness, and inhuman. So that is a limitation to this research. Because if they had this definition, they would discern from their statistics what is harassment and what is violence. But they balkanized. And he was talking about it. At one time he said harassment, another time he was talking about violence. So that is a limitation which you need to add. Then, you see, because this is going to generate money. Everybody is dying. This is statistics is really. So we are going to get money. So if we are getting money, I want to raise a gap, which all of us have been dancing around. And I want to thank the NGO gentleman who was here. I could not get your name, but I really want to salute you. I wish that all NGO practitioners would have that attitude of yours. Why? The gentleman recognizes that we have to work with government. Ours is kumemerera. It is, we can't do it all. Yes, we are helping government to raise issues that government may not have seen in order to pick them up. That attitude is, I need his card. I need to work with him. Yes, because his mind is progressive. Yes. But let me also tell you that once you had the doctor from health, you had the one from education, and I want to thank Lillian, my officer. Lydia, I want to thank you very much. You have really impressed me more today. Yes. Yes, your brain, I'm going to record with you. You heard that all of us, we believe that we should drop the silos, but we are concretizing the silos. Why? We have the National Youth Council leadership right from the village. You are talking about adolescents. These will be youth. Why don't you involve these young people to know these issues? All of you who have said you are going to
assassin. Now you come back. Somebody killed my friend.
These guys are agents. You used to lead. They're tying up loose ends. You next.
So I'm going to kill each and every one of them. And the only disappointment is that I only get to do it once.
The Equalizer 2 in IMAX.
The 10th Top 100 survey is here, showcasing business excellence for 10 years and beyond. Are you an SME that would like to attract equity investors, potential strategic partners, and increase your competitive edge? Daily Monitor, in partnership with KPMG, brings you the Top 100 Mid-Size Company Survey, starting this July until September 15th, 2018. Participation is voluntary, and all you need is a turnover between 360 million to 25 billion shillings, 3 years audited books of accounts, and are not listed on the stock exchange. For more information, call Agnes on 0392-080708. The Top 100 Survey, sponsored by ICEA Group, Uganda Investment Authority, and DFCU Bank. With pleasure. Terms and conditions apply.
Selena! Hello. Kitchen gets a 10 out of 10. Thank you. This also gets a 10.